I was born in Italy, in a town called Bergamo, which is in North Italy. And many years ago, don't ask me how many years ago, but I live in Orissa since the last 35 years. So, well, so many people leave their country in search of many things. In the past, people maybe were living, searching for gold, searching for adventure, searching for a job. Basically, I think I left in search of a form of expression, and this was what I was searching all through. From the very beginning, well, I didn't know that it would be dance. I didn't know what exactly would finally be my destination. But the search was on, and since she said that there is a book, and the title of this talk is My Journey, A Tale of Two Birds, is the same title of the book, and naturally it's my story. And why two birds? Because you rebirth when one phase is terminated and you start all over again. And I had the fortune, I believe, at a certain point to find what I was searching for, and to be ready to start all over again. So it was the second childhood which I started all over again, especially in Orissa. Well, it could have been maybe any part of the world, but why Orissa, why Cuttack, why Odissi, and why with that particular ambience? It's difficult to say, because many things happen because I believe also my destiny, but there is a certain thread which naturally put together all the different things which one is searching for, although in the beginning the directions are a little bit confused. So to start with, okay, after dance was just what I just had the chance to learn a little bit as a classical ballet when I was small. And as it happened with my students now also, many of them are starting learning and then dropping out because of the studies, because nobody gives the reason actually. They just drop out. And this is what I also did at that point when I was 10 years old. I had to drop out because my parents thought that it was not so important after all. The studies were more important. So it's a very common, 30 years ago, and now it is a common trend, it seems. So at that point, I was very obedient, and I come from a very Orthodox Catholic family, where father was the person who decided, and mother was, of course, very much in the shadow, in the sense that he was deciding, and all of us, the children, had to obey. Well, I obeyed up to when I was 15, and after that I started to rebel, and it is very important because otherwise I would not have reached here. All these sort of rebellions and detachment which I went through are very essential, because everything was sort of planned over there. I mean, my father was he was three things. He was a lecturer, he was a publisher, he had founded his own publishing book house, and he was a politician. And Italy and India in that way are very similar, in the sense if you are the daughter of a politician and member of parliament, he came eventually. I mean, you can have what you want, basically, in the sense that you can get introduced here, you can get it. The background over there was already set, in the sense that I could have I could have continued the publishing book house as a head of the publishing book house, and done so many things. And in fact now while I'm telling this, it reminds me that Guruji, for the first 2-3 years he couldn't make out why I was not going back, and he had formulated in his mind a lot of different possible theories. No, maybe she's a spy, maybe she's running away, then somebody told no, she has left behind a daughter. So finally, after 6 years, I was in Orissa, without never going back to Italy and Varsity. I started to go back to perform, and in the second tour, he also came with me, and he saw the house, he saw my family, and he saw that whatever I left behind, and he looked at me and said, now I know, you're not dangerous, you're just mad. So that is the synthesis of the entire thing. So yeah, madness is required. If you're not mad, probably you don't find this 5,000 miles away from home and coming here, leaving everything behind without knowing what is going to happen, where you are going to reach, without even thinking about that. So, but when one is on the way, one is traveling in your journey, you don't realize all this. I mean, you are not going to find out if you're mad or not. You just have to do it. There is something which it's pushing you towards that, and you cannot avoid. And of course, a little bit of adventurous spirit you have to have, and strong willpower. And my town is near the mountain, so we are all quite stubborn in nature. And so it's all these qualities are very essential, which I brought with me, and I still I think they are very useful for surviving in every circumstances. And so after this stint with the classical ballet, which I had to leave, and I didn't have the possibilities, the capacity at that point to rebel, because I was still 11 years old. So when I started to rebel, I was in the college, and it was the time of the student revolution, the 70s, the late 70s, 78, 79, the famous 78 student revolution. And of course, I was in the college, and I was very much part of the people who were occupying the college. I was in the door, leaving the principal outside, and protesting and wanting to abolish this and abolish that. And of course, the principal were thinking that by bringing, my father was already an important man in the city at that point. So he was thinking that by bringing him, he would be able to convince all the students to come out of the city and of the college, but there was no, it didn't succeed. Because whatever, at that point, my first rebellion in fact was against this authoritarianism of my father. So whatever, if he had, if he was belonging to a certain party, I was belonging to the opposition party totally. And then the church, those imposition of the religion was also very strong. It was a form of Catholicism which was imposed, and a lot of sense of guilty, and to have to go and confess, and having sinned, maybe some sin has not been confessed, so my soul is black, is not white, is not clean. So all this kind of visionary. Now Catholicism has changed a lot, has opened up a lot. But that time it was whatever it was related to the body was sin. And I still remember my grandmother, she never, I used to love to be in my grandmother's village. And everything was, but for example, I was living in her room, and she never undressed with the light on, always in the dark. And she was telling, oh, don't look into the mirror too much, because the devil will come and will show up. So all this, it was there very much in that form of Catholicism, which was there in the talking about 40, 50 years ago. So all this, whatever it was, physical contact and dance, music, joy, and all these things in the church was not admitted. There was singing, but always very without physical movement, without. So it was. The contact, the type of relation which we had with our body was very strange. It was like it was something sinful. So with that background, the fact that I was not allowed to continue to dance anymore, it was. I mean, in the beginning, it was not possible for me. I think. Living in that particular atmosphere to immediately rebel against that. So the rebellion had to start from periphery, in a sense that first I had to rebel against the imposition to go to church every Sunday, to do the communion every Sunday and all these things. Then I had to rebel against the fact that I couldn't go meet with the boys so in fact my first boyfriend which I had was the most revolutionary in the college, was the one which really pushed me out of all this, and it was very important for me to the first relationship because and of course it was opposed totally by my parents. In fact we had to do all the things by hiding and all the lies, a lot of lies and all these things, but I did it, I didn't stop. But it was still in the phase of lying, not having and sometimes being discovered and then getting beaten up. So I was the eldest one in the family, so my brother and my sister who came after me had a little bit of more open doors. So I had to get all the more stuff. So yeah. Just my auntie one day she told me that when I was born she was crossing the road with my father. Just he came out from the clinic where I was born, and he just saw two or three young girls just free going around and their hair open and all these things, and he said, "Oh, my daughter will never become like this." So from that idea that he started on, where I reached, you can imagine how much I had to break all the walls and all the. So yeah, but finally he actually was the person he was very generous, but he had to go through a lot of pain, I suppose, because I mean I didn't correspond to the image that he had in mind, but the reconciliation actually happened when he finally came to Orissa and they saw me totally changed. So, but I had to reach Orissa. So to reach here, I had to go to and make them go through all this. So my coming to in '79 to Orissa, since then I'm still there. It was the third trip to India. Actually, the first one, it happened in 1974. And that time it was still possible to come by road, in the sense that Afghan was not yet occupied by Russia and the Iran-Iraq war was not started. Because from 78 to 79 onward, that would have been that road would not be possible. So I came by road, I wanted to come alone. I did this trip on my own because it was important for me to come out from the ambience which I was familiar with and to try myself, to put myself in trial every day. There was nothing planned in that trip, nothing planned at all. I just took the Orient Express, which was the famous train which was from Paris to Istanbul, which was coming via Milano. Just got into the Orient Express and nothing, only what I knew was from the tales of people who had already done the trip, which would have told me, be careful this, you will get diarrhea, you will get this, you will get the passport will be stolen, this will be stolen. In fact, everything happened. Passport was stolen, the diarrhea got everything. But nothing stopped me from having this it was actually under those were the time in which we young people were influenced by Jack Kerouac, Hermann Hesse, the Orient, India was a destination at that point, not for me, not yet too much philosophical, but it was a destination where it was really an adventure, which was part of try ourselves to put ourselves on the road. It was the trip on the road. So the famous book by Jack Kerouac, On the Road. It was just to every day wake up to a new adventure, to a new horizon, to a new and invent your life every day. So take it as it comes and experience it the way it comes, without planning, without put any barrier to whatever is going to meet you. So I should say that very soon this kind of search brought me also through the philosophy of the Eastern country, Zen, Zazen, the Buddhist Japan Buddhist religion, the Chinese ancient religion, and Chinese ancient philosophy. So my studies in the philosophy. So now I have to talk about these two important things. One was my philosophical studies, and one was this search for the physical expression. So the Eastern philosophy was introduced to me through the studies of Carl Gustav Jung, the psychoanalysis. So it was the psychoanalysis, Western psychoanalysis of Carl Gustav Jung, who opened me the door, the bridge, built the bridge between the West and the East. So through the lens of the psychoanalysis, I was approaching all this culture and the different common denominators among all this culture, and as Jung was saying, the archetypes, the symbols which are common, the symbol of quaternity, the symbol of trinity, the circle, what the symbols were meaning in their own culture, and what the symbols would be meaning for the as a psyche, as product of our psyche. So this was one thread, and another one was the physical expression, the search for physical expression. So I started with theater. As I said, dance remained a little bit in the shadow because I took a long round to go back to that, but it was probably necessary. So I got into a theater company which was doing theater in my own town, which was a theater, quite conventional theater, Commedia dell'arte in Italian. So it was conventional in the sense that not too much physical, but more recitation through the words, conventional type of theater. From there, those were the year in which a new type of theater was starting, and it starts from Poland, from Jerzy Grotowski. He called it the third theater, the poor theater. It was a theater in which the physicality of the actor was actually the main form of expression. And many of the exercises Grotowski put in the training of this poor theater, third theater, were also coming from the eastern part of the world. And he also came to learn to study Kathakali. Some exercise from Kathakali was included in this training of the third theater. So Jerzy Grotowski was the actors belonging to Jerzy Grotowski were circulating, giving stages, giving workshops. And it is at one of these workshops which I took part in Venice, and I discovered this incredible source of energy which was inside the body. And although they didn't give us too much specific guideline, it was more just to leave the creativity was out. So it was a workshop in which in 15 days, 20 days, in which a group of people would be living together. Whatever idea would come to you, you would be able to materialize it, involving all the other participants. So it could be any kind of big bonfire that would last the entire night, what kind of song, what kind of movement, what kind of things would inspire, or whatever you had in mind, you would do. So it was just to make your creativity comes out, untapping your creativity. So this was one experience. Then there was some other experience of another workshop from Bread and Puppet, which was an American group who came to Italy for a workshop. And with them I learned to build big masks, to walk on stilt, and to make parade, street theater, because the street theater was coming to vogue very much in those years. So I'm talking about always in the late 70s. And so through this experience, I was always, as I said, searching for a form of expression, physical expression, a language of the body. So at this point, it happened that in one of the theatres in Bergamo, in my own town, one actor from Kerala, Krishna Nambudiri, came and demonstrated bare body without the full makeup of the Kathakali actor. Demonstrated how in Kerala, in Kathakali, they had this full drama in which each movement of each part of the body had a particular meaning and a particular function, and through which you could express any kind of emotion, any kind of situation. So it was a revelation, because all through in this kind of theatre and improvisation which we were doing, we didn't have any particular drama. Actually, it was a little bit the opposite process, because what we were doing, we had a theme, and by giving this theme, we were moving whatever impulsively would come to us in our mind, we would move. Out of that, we stream out, we cut down something, we repeat the improvisation, then again we stream down, then again, and finally, out of the improvisation, we may get something which we could work on. But in this way, from what I understood from the Kathakali actor demonstration, it was just the opposite. You start from a very codified language, and you have to absorb this codified language so much that you reach at the end to be free in this codified language. So we started from a wildness to reach a certain nucleus, a certain meaning, a certain, but here we start from the strict grammar and to reach that kind of liberty inside there. So it was a discovery. And again, it was India. So it was the second time, but this time when I came, I decided immediately after I saw the Kathakali performance. This time it was my second trip, but it was not by land, or it was not the trip on the road. That I had done it, and it was to be done in that particular moment. Now I flew and immediately went to Kerala to attend 3 months of workshop by Krishna Nambudiri, which was organized for this purpose, because during this tour in Italy, many other young people had come to him and said, we want to learn. Actually, that was a movement. We young people were really searching for something. There was a lot of movement in the theatre world and all these things. So Krishna Nambudiri decided to have 3 months workshop, and we all met there. We were 10, 12 people from Italy. We didn't know each other in the beginning of the workshop. We did this 3 months rigorous workshop in the month of April, May, June, so in the middle of the summer, pre-monsoon, but with the lake of sweating always around us. But Kerala is really an incredible country, and that small village accepted us so well. And at the end of the 3 months, we started in 12 people, and at the end we reached 3 only, because all the others were slowly. They went to swim in the river, and the ambience was too beautiful. And 3, I was one of them, and we did the entire Purappadu and one piece of Abhinaya. I did it with a green patch, because I wanted to experience the full makeup of the male character. So at the end of this cathartic experience, I was going to faint almost, because the heat, because all the village people had come to see, and because of this muda which was so heavy and because of these meters of clothes which was around me. But when I didn't faint and I survived, but I was so totally in another world. And I just asked at that point, Krishna Nambudiri, what else now? Now I cannot go back to Italy as if nothing has happened. I think this experience has been too strong. So he told me there is a beautiful dance time in Orissa. So where is Orissa? So I had to see the map and see, oh, the other side. And so why at that point he told me Odissi, that's why I said destiny is there at a certain point in our life. So, and he had met Sanjukta Panigrahi, one of the major exponents, all of you must have been hearing about her. He had met her when he was touring in Europe, because both Nambudiri and Sanjukta Panigrahi were also part of that new theatre. They were called as exponent of trainer of a particular dance theatre form from the East, from India. But they were in touch with Eugenio Barba, Jerzy Grotowski. So somehow the things were coming to me. So, so he told me I met this beautiful lady and she is doing this style of Odissi, she in Orissa. So at that point I crossed the land and went to Bhubaneswar, as I was still very wild, because in Kerala they didn't really told me what to wear and all these things, so we were very free in our... So Sanju Nani also was quite open-minded and she didn't mind my aspect with all the hair open and my obi doubled in the Kerala style and all this. And but I didn't stay much there. I was still very much under the influence of the Kathakali, the Kerala and all these things. So I went back to Italy. I just learned for a month or so. I went back to Italy and I went back to my experiment in theatre. And I thought that I would utilize a little bit of what I learned from the Kathakali, a little bit of Odissi, in my theatre experiment. So this was what I had in mind. So after a few months, in '79, I had decided, many things in the meantime, my relationship had ended. I had decided that if I want to really utilize this movement in my theatre work, I had to learn more of this. So this is what was in my mind when I came to India in 1979, on 1st of June 1979. And with a small bag, I mean, I was still a vagabond. I was still with all my hitchhiking in mind, and so not too much heavy and not to put roots anywhere. This was still in my mind. And so only one book was there in my bag, which was a book on it was the book Metamorphosis by Ovid, and with a lot of myths, Greek myths inside. So one of the myths, with Echo and Narcissus, the story of Echo and Narcissus, the narcissistic, Narcissus, how he sees himself into the water and falls in love with himself. That particular myth was there in the book, which I wanted to put up as a play. So that's why I came to India, because I thought I will learn a little more of Odissi, a little more of Kathakali. And with this movement which I am learning, I am going back to put up this play. So this is what was in my mind. So I came, and as I was, sleeveless banyan and rainbow skirt and all open air, and straight away, before the previous year, before leaving from Sanjukta, somebody told me her guru is there in Qatar and his name is Guru Keluchara Mohapatra, which I couldn't even pronounce the name. They just wrote a piece of paper and I just put it away. So this time with this piece of paper, I thought, okay, I will go to this guru, and I went straight by train from Bombay to Bhubaneswar, by bus from Bhubaneswar to Cuttack, and in Cuttack bus stand I asked to a rickshaw, do you know this gentleman? Yeah, he brought me by rickshaw. As I was, I appeared in Guruji's house, provoking a lot of reaction from the wife, because he got scared by my wild and I came to know later on that she ran inside the house, hey, Ma Chandi, Asila. So this, I've been told these things 100 times after later on, but that time I didn't realize. So, but Guruji was and he accepted me as a student. And slowly, the transformation happened, in the sense that whatever it was supposed to be 6 months in Orissa, 6 months in Kerala, and go back after 1 year with a return ticket that was valid only for 1 year. It became 6 years continuously in Orissa without ever going back to Italy. So what happened exactly there is very strange. Not very, yeah, it's strange because it was not planned at all in that way. And I didn't realize at all what was happening. But what must have happened is that whatever the two the two things which had remained separated in the West. One was my philosophical search. This kind of Eastern thought, Eastern way of interpreting life. Through symbols, through connection, through synchronicity, as Jung is telling, where everything has a meaning. Everything which happened at the same moment is interconnected. So it was a different way of interpreting the events, not the vertical way of the cause effect of the Western thought, but giving the same importance to whatever happening in your life in that particular moment, because everything which is happening in that particular moment is part of your thought, your action, and whoever is happening is part of that moment, which is the present, so being much more root in the present moment. So this kind of philosophical approach, together with all the studies of psychoanalysis and Eastern philosophy, it was on one thread. And another thread was search of physical expression. So these things were running parallel until I was in the West. But when I came here with this dance form, the two things got together. Because this dance has a content, has a symbology, has a meaningful, is a philosophical meaning, which you have to understand. You cannot do only as a physical movement. Because it has all a culture, all a literature, all a philosophy, a religion, a symbology behind, that if you don't go through, you cannot just express this. This is how I was totally absorbed by this, because these two things, the intellectual and the physical, whatever had been separated before, they got into a synthesis. And I got interested in the content, in the literal content, in the symbology behind the cult which I was surrounded by, the cult of Jagannath, the cult of Vaishnava, the cult of Tantra, the cult of whatever symbology was there, whatever figurative symbols were there, were all channelized through the dance. And the mudra which I was doing had a connection with whatever mudra the pujari was performing during the ritual. He was performing every day in Guruji's house. Whatever position, posture which I was learning in the dance, I was observing it was the same posture which Guruji's wife was, how she was sitting while doing the chapati, or the same chanting that she was doing to the tulsi plant of the sun god ritual was the same chanting which we were dancing in the classroom. The pujari was coming in the arati in the evening, the beat which was giving had a certain tala which was corresponding to one of the tala which we were dancing. So all this correspondence was creating a total context which was not made out of things separated, but all interconnected. So this interconnection with synthesis was what captured me totally. So I didn't realize that I was becoming part of this context, and it was, I mean, the same thing. Even if I myself, I was not doing the ritual myself, but I was part of the ritual which was surrounding me everywhere. In the morning I didn't need the alarm because the lady was coming up to the puja room and sound the bell for waking up the god, and then go to 6:30 time to the town. I mean, then I was going in the road to go to Guruji's place, and I was seeing the the design on the floor outside the door. Oh, today is not Tuesday because this is Mangala Puja, so Mangala, this is happening. Then I was everything was connected. I mean, the shopkeeper would open the things, and before opening the cash counter and all these things, would do the puja with agarbati to the things. So everything was so. There was not an action which was not corresponding to whatever I was learning. Everything was fitting in a certain things which I had to explore and to understand and to get totally in it if I wanted to express it and to express through this language which I was learning, dance. So the physical was not more only physical. The grammar of the body was not only a grammar which was just mechanic, but it was corresponding to so many layers which I had to go through. So this is what happened when I came, and this is, I suppose, and just to because I told you that I came with that book, so that Eco and Narcissus actually happened not in Italy as a play, utilizing a little bit of movement here and there, but it happened as my first creative choreography in Chow dance in 1985 in the East-West Dance Encounter in Bombay, in NCPA Bombay, organized by Max Muller-Baban. So East-West Dance Encounter, that was the right place where this dance could be created, and that was I had forgotten totally about it. In 6 years I was here, from 79 to 85, learning Chow, learning Odissi, learning all this Git Govinda and Vaishnavism, philosophical things, and reading and all these things. At a certain point when Georg Leshner, the director of Max Muller-Baban, came to me and said, you have to participate in this encounter, but it has to be absolutely a new creative piece. Suddenly, that meat for which I came 6 years before, and it remained dormant there in a corner of the room because I had only one room. I was in a Basati, one room. So there it came out again, and everything fall into pieces. In a sense, he suggested me to go and work with a composer who was living in Pondicherry. He was also from Switzerland, Igor Vakevich. I went there. The Eco was created by the music, which was electronic music, Eco, and Narcissus was the character which was portrayed in the Chow form. In the Chow form, which was a creative way of exposing the Chow form. But it took 6 years. So, but that took place. So, in life, I'm sure all of us have experienced that there are circles. I mean, we start and then we finish the circle and then another one starts. But things comes through. So, another things which came through, it was that the same theater world of Eugenio Barba, Jerzy Grotowski. At a certain point, in 2003, because as I said, this Sanchuta Panigrahi, this Krishna Namudiri, other from No Theatre, they were all called as trainer in this kind of, as they call theatre anthropology, ISTA. ISTA is Institute of Theatre Anthropology, in which this East and West, this form of Eastern theatre was studied as a process, as a form of training for the Western actor to understand his body. So at that point, Sanjukta had continued to go to this, to participate in this ISTA. But after that, at a certain point, I was called as a trainer from India in that particular ambience, from where I started as a totally, searching for something. From where I started, from that kind of theatre, where physical theatre, from where I started, without having a direction. Now, after so many years, in 2003, I was called back as a trainer of a particular discipline of Oriental theatre. Although I was not born here, but I came from the West. So, this one is important for me to tell because, of course, while staying here, it has not always been easy to convince not only some part of Indian people, but also the West, that a Westerner could emerge so much in an Eastern form of cultural form, to become at a certain point a teacher or an exponent or a trainer at the same level of a person who would be born there. So now this maybe looks a little bit strange because the things have changed. But in the years I was here, I had to, again here in India, like I break a lot of resistance in my own country, I had to break resistances here also. So, for example, certain festival like Khajuraho, the big festival where all the dancers aspire to go, for many years were not open to us, to me, and to us because of the fear that it would be controversial because we were not Indian origin. Or ICCR, Indian Council for Cultural Relations, had a policy that even if you are in their panel as recognized classical dancer, they will not subside, they will not sponsor you in one of the three abroad, in the same way like they sponsor any other of Indian origin. So this Indian origin, being a classical dancer, Indian dancer in India, not of Indian origin, it was not always easy. So I managed to be the first one to be sponsored by ICCR in 2005. So I broke that policy. And I entered into the Khajuraho Festival already twice. And now, I mean, once the first one is accepted, all the others can be accepted. So maybe it's a little bit my destiny to be a pioneer in several things. So to be the opener. Now, of course, there's a lot of difference. Even in Orissa itself, Konarka Dance Festival, I could get into the Konarka Dance Festival after 20 years I was there. But now, in many festivals in Orissa, they are searching for foreigners because they can put international level. But at my time, I went so many times to the cultural officer there to try to get into the government sponsor program. Never succeeded for so many years. But this is all the challenges. And I like challenges. Otherwise, I would not have chosen a very not so conventional way. But as I said, it's something which I didn't do it for either for proving that I was able to do it, or I didn't do it with any particular things in mind that I have to reach there or anything. It was just that this was what I had to do. There is nothing else. I mean, my focus, even when I reached there in Orissa, my main objective, my main focus was to be able to reach Guruji's house every day, not missing a single moment of his teaching. So I was following him everywhere. Calcutta, Delhi, Bombay. He was doing a workshop all over. And in Bombay, the Bombay people will be there. In Calcutta, the Calcutta people will be there. But I will be everywhere. I will follow him everywhere. Until at a certain point after 20 years, he told me, but now don't come to the class anymore. so my focus was very, and I never had one moment of regret or one moment in which I would think maybe I've done the wrong things, maybe I'm missing something somewhere else, maybe never. So this is, I think, a luck. Because when you can be so much engrossed in what you are doing without thinking if there will be any come out, any I succeed or not, that it was not that I was totally immersed in what I was learning day by day, and that was the most important thing for me. So I think it's time, or shall I continue, or shall we open the...
Okay. Is there you would like to ask anything, or
I would like to ask you one thing. How did you survive in this atmosphere in Kenya, Italy? And how did you, did anybody sponsor you, or any financial problems you had, or economic?
No, I didn't have any sponsorship in a way. And I was living in a very, even now I'm very Spartan in my way of living. So for 12 years I was in the paying guest, as a paying guest in Qatar. I was the first one again to inaugurate a paying guest accommodation in Qatar, in Orissa. It was 300 rupees per month, which was including my room, the Barsati room, and the food. So then I got at a certain point, I got a scholarship for 2 years from ICCR and from 2 years from the Italian government. But always by remaining here, I never had to go back to get the scholarship. It was all paperwork. My mother at a certain point had, my mother, I mean, not being a part at all in this field, she was a headmistress, but at a certain point she improvised herself as a sort of manager, because to get her daughter back for 2 days. So she was also trying to connect to organize, not organizing, but to connect so that from after 6 years that I was here, I started to go back at least once a year for tour with my musician, or when I started to have students with my dancers. So that was also a source of income. And I built my own house after after 20 years I was there. Now I'm there since 26 years, 79. So for building the house, my father helped me a little bit. But otherwise, actually economically, I've never been. It's never been a problem. No, it's never been tough. Yeah. So that is also. I never had to. In the beginning, when I came, I remember I had $1,000 in my pocket, and it was supposed to last for 1 year. I think that time it was 8,000 rupees exchange in 79. And then I stayed over. So when my parents came to see me, my father got a Luna for me. That time, so I was very famous in Qatar as Luna Bali. Because everybody knew my room. I was the only girl with riding Luna in Qatar. So at that point. So everybody knew from where I was coming, where I was going. And Guruji's house later. And also any type of, in the night, Guruji would switch off the light not before 2 o'clock, because he composes all when the Kumanti would come or Sanchuta Panigai would come late in the night, and the choreography would happen late in the night. So I never want to leave. So up to the moment the light was on, I was there. So even 2 o'clock in the night, I would take my Luna back and cross the bazaar. But Qatar was a special place. It was never totally deserted. Those kind of bazaar kind of city where something is always happening into the night. But even if there was any police at the chopper or any crossroad or something, when they were seeing me, they were looking the other side. They knew from where I was coming to where I was going. So it has been a privilege to be in Qatar, because the atmosphere was totally not polluted. There was no tourist. Like Bhubaneswar, temples are there, so all these kids which are behind tourists, hello, yeah, all these type of things. And in Qatar, everybody. No, I didn't hear a certain even once to hey, hello, this kind of thing. In 12 years I was there. I was very much hosted by everybody. It was like a pride if I could go in anybody's house to drink a glass of milk or to. It was, and the houses are still now open. Kathak is really that kind of Indianness is very much there. So hospitality is outstanding. So I never felt alone, even for a second in Qatar, although I was there.
the challenge of language. Not only the language of dance, but the language of
Oriya.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing is that Kathak was a town where the Guruji was not talking English, the shopkeeper was talking English. The first family where I stayed, nobody was talking English except the boy, the son. So the daughter, the mother, they were all in Oriya. So within 1 year, I learned Oriya. And with that Oriya speaking, I mean, one word of Oriya and the smile on the face opening up of everybody's face. So that made me very popular. So, and the language which I learned, it was just from the roadside. I never went to any classroom to learn. So it was really what I was hearing was repeating. So it was looking very colloquial and very confident. And so then when I didn't know some word, I put an English word there. So, but very talk very quickly. So it was. So everybody was really loving me because, especially because of the way I speak. So I loved it. I had to learn. So that didn't give the possibility to Guruji to exercise his English. He would have loved to be able to exercise his little bit of English with me, but because I learned Oriya too much quick. So that I didn't give him the possibility, so I was exercising my Oriya with him.
So the teaching process between your Guruji and the students was quite smooth?
Yeah, he was incredible. I mean, he could teach in any language, in any way, and to anybody. If English would come from somebody, a stranger from abroad, he would manage with English. From Bengal, he would talk in Bengal. So Oriya, or he could even if he was going abroad to Russia or all these things during his tour, he would be able to talk to the driver or to he was so expressive.
I'm more interested in the technicalities of the dance language. How did you pick all that up? The tals, the mythology, the symbology, all that.
Yeah, I was side by side. I was reading a lot, and like I started to do a research quite soon because of the advantage of the language. For example, the first research it was on the Devadasi. And that time, I started immediately after hardly 1 year I was there to be in touch with one of the Devadasi in Puri and Guru Rabriya. So two of them was still alive that time, and I sort of been adopted by Rabriya. So she was described. I never been able to enter into the temple. But whatever she told me, she described so much about the entire things of the temple and their role and what they were doing. And so this kind of research I was doing from the very beginning. So I wrote I was writing articles on this. So my intellectual activity continued, although my physical activity was taking a lot of time because naturally I was learning to walk all over again. That's why I call it the second birth. I mean, I was learning to talk all over, to a new language, to walk all over again, to move in a certain way. So at that point, and I had already done my thesis in philosophy when I came. So I was already, but I was knocking at the culture, and I was humbled down by the fact that I didn't know anything. So I was a child. It was a second child, and whatever when the ego or something would come out, Guruji would be the first one to crash it. So he was very good in crashing the ego or the expectation or something that you have. But if you didn't have any expectation, then he will take you up. So he was a psychologist in a way, but without having studied or without even know what it is psychology. But it was it was a spontaneous. He was a day guru. I mean, really. So I was fortunate. Both the style I got the best guru for Odissi. That was a fortune because many people actually they roam around and they waste time and energy in going to the wrong one. But straight to him. And in Chow also, I was very lucky that Sri Hari Naik was one of the best guru, and I got that. Also was again destiny, because I never knew about Chao. But after 4 months I was there, I followed Guruji to Delhi when he gave a workshop in Delhi, Pradharma Mahavidyalaya in 79, and I just walked into the Bharatiya Kala Kendra. Just walk inside. In the first room I went, one lady, not even a boy, was doing beautiful movements of a bird, and the old man was a big drum. I was totally, it was full body movement, so expressive. And so I asked to this man, and he told me, yeah, this is a dance style. And I said, what is the dance style? Chao dance. I said, from where? From Orissa. I said, oh. so there was no running away. So in any case, I was there just to follow Guruji for a month, and I was going back to Orissa. So when I went back, I went to Kasagit Mahavidyalaya, and this guru, the guru which I met in Delhi, he gave me the name of Sri Hari Naik, which was teaching in Kasagit Mahavidyalaya. So there is, and it was a full body movement, so which reminded me very much about what I was doing in theatre, what I was searching in theatre. So the two things got complementary, in the sense that the Odissi, the most femininity of the Odissi, the gracefulness of the Odissi, the things that was more focused on tal and mudra and special expression. Whereas this one, vigor, energy, masculine, and balance, and more the full body, not expression to the hands and face. So both together they complemented each other. But I had to be careful because Guruji in the beginning didn't like the idea that I was doing also Chao, because there are certain movement like in Odissi we are having this movement, in Chao we are having this movement. So if this would come in the Odissi one, I would really I was thinking that. So I was always very conscious to keep them separated. Even now, in spite of the fact that I've learned both, I've never been interested to mix the two. So if I do creative work in Chao, it will be for expanding the Chao. If I do creative work in Odissi, it will be for expanding Odissi. So that way it is.
Can you please confirm some of the mudras of Chao thing? We don't know much about Chao.
I knew I had to bring something. Chao, it's a martial form. So the two hands are usually in the technique. This is the shield and this is the sword. So whatever you do, you either defend or attack. So this is the movement of the hands during the training period. So all the leg movements are the most eloquent. So there are different kind of leg elevation, jumps, balance, and so all this expression is done mostly with the body and the leg, but not much with the face and the hands. So it is derived from the Paiko, from the martial practice at the time of the feudal time of the foot soldier. So from their practice for training, for keeping themselves warm and fit for the battle. From there, when they were not more utilized in the war, this kind of technique came out. And the Maharaja of Mayurbanji, they refined it into a dance form. So it has all a item which comes from there.
How will you define India in general and Indian people?
India
and Indian people, how will you define?
Hospitable, like loving people, and very much, the kind of reception and acceptance I have found here, I don't think I could find anywhere else. So when of course now we are in a time in which all this talk of tolerance is there. From my side, I'm sure anybody who read this book will find the greatness of India, because I always had nightmare thinking that when I started to go back to perform and all these things, thinking that something will happen for which I cannot come back. So for me, that would have been the worst happening. So I think that is a great, I mean the basic spirit of Indian people is of this, to accept, to be so hospitable. I mean the hospitality is incredible.
And what is your best and worst experience in India?
Well, worst, I mean there are things which I also would like that they are changing, like too much noise pollution.
Yeah.
It's extreme. I mean, I stayed in a very nice place in I found again, I was lucky to find a place near the Bambindu Sagar, near the temple in Bhubaneswar. I built a house and all this thing. But it's near to Mandapa, where the marriage things are there. So I don't mind to hear the litanies and all the chant of the temples in the morning, but the noise of the marriage processions and obviously all through the night, every time. So this kind of lack of discipline, yeah, and social awareness.
Social awareness.
Very so, and not to be proud of, like the old part of Bhubaneswar is the most precious. I mean, people would come to Bhubaneswar, of course, like the new part also has developed, the Infosys and all, engineering college, IIT and all this thing. But the people comes to see the temples. And it is the most neglected, the most dirty, the people of the old town, they don't appreciate, they are not proud of what they are nearby. I mean, they don't value. And this is what I'm trying to teach to my students. My students in dance, they are all from that old town, most of them. Some people are coming from outside, but most are from the middle class, no middle class. So I understand there are many financial constraints and people have to reach because developing process, because your friend have a certain mark which will allow you to go in a certain college and you have to try to do. So by understanding all this, but still not missing out whatever richness is there in your own culture around you. So many of these girls who are staying there, they have never even looked at one sculpture of the temple, which is there near their house. So it's sort of education also which are getting very mnemonic oriented, very tuition is necessary other way, and that is also again imbibing from outside, putting it in their mind, pressing it down in their mind. So I don't find them asking questions, and I don't find them curious to know, also to contest or to ask why this, what. So it's all this I would like to shake them and to. So there are many things that, but still I'm positive about it.
I have a couple of questions, and I just want to push the discussion in a slightly different direction. Firstly, of course, I would be a bit skeptical about this conclusion that Indians are most hospitable and learning. I mean, look at the history of rioting in this country in the last 60, 70 years. But that's a separate issue. As a Westerner, I can see that you will be very privileged in having relatively easy access to the Indian world. And I can see that you have striven very hard to understand India by living here. If you look at the broader world today, there is a huge and increasingly greater gulf that separates the West from the East. You know, I mean, there is no better expression of this than the interview the Iranian foreign minister gave BBC some months ago. You know, and he told them that you Westerners don't understand us. You don't understand the complexities of our culture. I think this is true. That there is a huge gulf between the West perceives the decolonized world. Given your experiences, without being able to get physically immersed in another culture like you have, how does one educate the West about the country of India's complexity and vastness,
Yeah, this
which
is.
Indians don't understand.
Yeah.
How does one do this? You know, I mean, I think Junod is trying to do this.
I'm not trying to educate the West.
We are trying to educate ourselves first. But you know, how does one
I think it is not possible in this way. I think the best way is to be aware of what you are. I mean, of our value. Then it will shine on its own. I mean, to reach out nowadays is very deviating. I also feel very bad that in the West only the peak of things are reaching. The dowry things, the death for dowry which are existing, the rapes, as if. But the other day, one of the Italian came because I also am not very aware of what is happening there much now because I'm too much here. And she was telling, what is all this fuss about so many rape cases here? In Italy, every day in the newspaper there is at least one news of murder from boyfriend to girlfriend. They don't rape, they murder, they kill. So we don't know about this. But from the embassy over there, like this, there is a notice: don't travel to India because women are not more safe and all this. So they are all distorted news, unfortunately, which goes from one country to another. I remember even I quote Italy because it's one of the maybe some other countries are the exchange is a little more, but certain countries like Italy, Spain, smaller. For example, only what was the film Bombay? Salam Bombay, where one film reaches there, and in that film everything is there. So there's the prostitution, there's the drugs, the children abuse, everything. So I was thinking, it's a dangerous thing because you cannot have a balanced view of the things if only these most glamorous news and glamorous things are reaching outside. How can you have an overall? You have to be able to put these extreme phenomena which are there everywhere, but you have to put it in the context in which is happening. What is the reason? How to tackle this? How to it's to breach the things is always very, especially now nowadays. It's true that the Gulf is more. Although we should say that because of the communication, because of the Instagram, because of the digital world and all these things, we should be more close. But why is not like this? Why is only certain extreme news reach or distorted news reach or manipulated news reach? And these news which are extrapolated from the context, they give a distorted view of the other country. So according to me, the things is not to be too much preoccupied of what we are, how to reach outside, but to not to lose what we are here. And this is really the moment, as I said, the kind of education which is imparted. The young people are coming up without losing out these values which are part of this spiritual value, which are not religious. Spiritual, the physical and the mental discipline which was there, which is, I mean, it is lost now because the life has changed. Because, but these rules which are Indian, which are not there in other places, let the other people come and discover and take it. We don't have to reach out. Let us, but have it, and so that we are not losing it ourselves. So this is, I think, is the most important thing in this today world. Then I understand what you are saying, that when you can't understand how I say the hospitality also. But you also have to understand that, okay, I may not be a Muslim, but I am not a Hindu either. So, and nobody asked me anything about in Orissa. I've been accepted as I was nobody ever wanted to know my past, from where I coming and from what was my. So that kind of suspiciousness, that kind of it was not there, so that maybe is. I don't know. It's something which is I think is important. I mean, if you go abroad, immediately you have to introduce yourself. You have to give your reference. You have to give your. Nobody for so many years asked me when this book came out. Maybe now, if they are reading it, they know who was my father, who was from where I'm coming, and all these things. Otherwise, I have been accepted in so many houses and. Really like a daughter. So something we have to have. I mean, we have to care for this, and we have to value this. Not only the things which are. I know that there are many things which are not in the same direction, but this is also there. So let us value this also. Maybe this is not put in the newspaper. Maybe the first part is in the newspaper, only the other news are coming. That is the problem.
Thanks for sharing your story. It has been a long journey and very inspiring. I'd like to know whether you feel you achieved your goal in life, and would you like to share what for future, what are your plans for future, especially on the spiritual front? Anything you'd like to say?
More than spiritual, I think I lack of something in the social. I mean, I would like to do more in the social. I mean, I have not found yet. Usually, I would react if I want to make a statement. I would immediately think to do a choreography, talk about through my dance. But after all, the dance may reach up to a certain extent. So maybe something more which I would like to give back to the society, which has been so good to me, especially when I stayed or this and all this thing. So I have not yet found the right way. I don't want just to give money to a cause, to orphanotrophy or and this is also something which one can always do. Even by staying in Europe, you can always send. But being there, I'm still searching for it, and I think that is still to be done for myself. Or continuing dancing and teaching. I cannot be no dancer can be dance. So we always die on stage. But that part is